The Microsoft Duo 2, a polarizing device that firmly earns the title of phablet, if anything ever has. With two separate 5.8-inch screens that come together to offer 8.3 inches of nearly square tablet real estate, this quirky contender launched with a litany of problems in 2021, and over a dozen updates later, finally began to offer a reasonably good user experience by mid-2022. But is this a device you might want to consider in 2023? Let's talk about that. With 5G and a Snapdragon 888 chipset, the same chipset used in the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, this phone is responsive, but I cannot say it's as fast as the other offerings in 2023. This might be down to optimization issues rather than the chipset, however. Some lag is definitely noticeable in transitions, and you might be noticing the same as I'm using it here. There are some little catches and stutters as the phone loads things now and then. This phone comes equipped with a 12-megapixel wide, 12-megapixel ultra-wide, and 16-megapixel telephoto lens with 2x optical zoom, along with another 12-megapixel front-facing camera. It also boasts up to 4K video recording at 60 frames per second. The front camera, however, is limited to 1080p at 30 frames per second. The phone comes in 128, 256, and 512GB storage configurations at 8GB of RAM across all. Unsurprisingly, there's no expandable storage to be found here, unfortunately. How about form factor? Well, I wouldn't exactly call this thing anything less than unwieldy personally. The weight of it isn't too bad at 283 grams. People with big pockets will have no problem, but for the most part, it is awkward to carry. It feels much more like a pocket novel or even an iPad mini 6, which is actually only 10 grams heavier and which, by the way, also has an 8.3-inch display. It's just much more rectangular than the Duo 2. The Duo 2's display is AMOLED, 90Hz, HDR, 401 pixels per inch, and tops out at 800 nits brightness, with Gorilla Glass Victus used in its front construction, as well as Gorilla Glass on the back here. Battery capacity is 4,449 mAh with 23-watt wired charging. There is no wireless charging to be found here, so keep that in mind if wireless charging is an important feature for you. In terms of hand feel, no surprises here. The phone does feel quality, with some firm response from the hinge as it is being bent back and forth. When opened back to back, the phone magnetizes together and rests perfectly flat against that camera bump, giving a satisfying click as it closes together. With the phone closed up, however, you'll quickly notice that while it is very cool, you can get some basic information from the spine of the phone. It's not exactly the most useful information. You can see things like what time it is, as you can see here, and you might be able to see things like whether you have any missed calls or messages, but there's virtually no way of checking on any meaningful information or notifications. The phone has to be opened to see anything of value. I would have loved to see something like the ability to quickly tap on an icon from the spine and have something like a scrolling ribbon for texts come up so I can read short messages at a glance. But unfortunately, that's not to be found here. This is, for me and many others, a deal breaker, but it could be a selling point for the few. It's the ultimate deterrent to mindless doom scrolling and constant screen checks. The pictures this phone takes are okay, but it's very unlikely you're buying this phone specifically for its camera capabilities anyway. They simply don't keep up with others in the same generation, even generations before it. It's a pretty Spartan experience here at best. Here's a snap taken on the Duo 2 for reference. I love that this phone gives me the feeling of using some high-tech, super fancy book and that I can take notes while reading an article, for example, or prop it up with a recipe while cooking. But the fact is, the form factor is very different, and that can really turn some people off. It feels like the future because of how nice and slim it is, but it also feels like something half-baked because it came out swinging at competitors that an average user might consider a more practical folding experience. Some people might go as far as to say that there are tablets doing a better job of what this phone aspires to achieve, but there are others still who will look at this phone and find such a totally unique way to experience how they consume media that they'll have a hard time accepting anything else. The phone is ultimately like a mixtape. It's unpolished, something inspiring, and completely tailored to the taste of a select few, without any regard for actually making money by the looks of things. All in all, I'd recommend this phone for an enthusiast who appreciates its attempt to meet productivity needs and doesn't mind its eccentricities, or for someone who is truly looking for the ultimate phone detox experience. Otherwise, I think average users would be better off exploring other offerings to avoid disappointment. Where this phone shines is undoubtedly in the reading experience. Whether in portrait or landscape, the ability to take handwritten notes quickly, and how its physical attributes allow you to actively remove distractions by physically closing the phone and setting it aside. More niche use cases might include Nintendo DS emulation. You'll either love this phone and wind up resenting the fact that there will never be anything else like it, or hating it because you expect a more typical experience that it simply isn't meant to deliver. The Duo 2 is, at the end of the day, influential in that it inspires new ways of consuming media and providing an innovative new form factor. It's a love note to people who genuinely wanted an interesting handheld PC experience. We often complain about how little creativity we see in phones today, but the Duo 2 is an excellent example of what happens when people actually try to do something different. It doesn't always succeed. It often ends up unsupported, and another footnote in tech archives, or inspiring interesting new ideas years later without surviving to actually compete among those new offerings. Thanks for stopping by and spending some time with me today. If you liked this video, please consider a like and subscribe. Bye for now.